Welcome back to this tutorial on how to create a currency converter. In our previous tutorial, we looked at how we could actually create radio buttons and how we can create a group from the radio buttons, as these are not default components of Xcode. In this tutorial, we're going to look at how we can use the radio buttons that we've created previously and make them functional, where we can enter in a currency like $120, select US dollars, and show how much it will cost in Australia for that. And if you select euros, how many Australian dollars you need to buy that many euros. Now we'll be picking this up from a previous tutorial. I'll put a link in the comments below to the previous tutorial. So that will bring you right up to this point. Now we have functioning working radio buttons that will give us the three different currencies we would like to convert between. So US dollars, euros and pounds. Now we need to put a title in for our application. Now when I develop my apps, I normally leave all the fonts, font sizes and everything to the end. So we'll keep doing that. Now I'm going to select up the top and add a new object, and this is going to be its label. And I'm just going to place that in the middle of the screen at the top. This is now going to be our currency converter. Now I'm not going to do anything other than center it at the moment, and then use the constraints to ensure that it's in its correct place. So once again, I'm just going to constrain it to the top of the screen and also to the left of the screen, and add those two constraints. Now we need an area to put in the price of the object that we would like to buy overseas. To do that, we've got to add a text box. Now a text box is different to a label because a text box allows us to enter in information. Now a text box doesn't come with a label, so once you put your text box in position, and then we constrain that text box, by going through the same process again. Now you notice that it snapped to a different size, so I'm just going to stretch this out once more because I didn't click on the most important thing, the width and the height. So these two constraints actually do to the top and the left of the screen. This ensures that it maintains its size on your screen. And add those constraints, and that'll add that to the text box itself, and you can see the constraints being added there. So now I also need to add a label to this. Now you could copy the label above, and up in the top right we'll put price of item. So now we know the price of the item. Now we'd like to have that in dollar signs, and we currently don't have the pound sign or the euro sign or anything like that. That can be something you could add to the program at a later stage. And it's more cosmetic than it is functional. Now once we've entered in the price of the item, we want to be able to select a radio button and then see the output down the bottom. So first of all, we need another label. So I'm going to add another label to the stage. Its text is going to be Australian dollars required. And then I'm just going to center this into the middle of the screen. Once again, you need to constrain it. And then add another label for the output. Now you can use a text box as the output. It's up to you if you want to use labels or text box to talk back to the user. But because it's going to be purely output, a label is an appropriate object to use. Now its default text is actually going to be something like $0.00, and then I'm going to put AU at the end of it so we know it's Australian currency. And also I'm going to center the label as well. So therefore we know the output will be here. Now the colors, size, fonts, etc. can be done at a later time. I'm mainly concerned with a basic layout and being able to have its functional coding working. Now there are two new objects that were placed on the stage. One is an input, one is an output. Because of that, we need to actually create the outlets for this. So once again, hold down Control, drag the text box up. And we needed to give it a name. Because it's a text box, it's TXT, which is the Hungarian notation. And then I'm going to call this item price. And I'm going to connect that Then I'm going to select the label, which is my output, and make an outlet for this. And it'll be called LBL for label, and I'm going to put AU cost. Now before I go any further, I'm just going to go Command S to save and just check my user interface by running it in the simulator. As you can see, I've got a basic layout and I can type into the text box and select the currency that I would like. Now that I know that that's working okay, I can then go and code. Now I mentioned in the previous video, as you select these radio buttons, it actions a body of code. So if I select the US dollar one, it has a tag of 1 and it runs this function if selected 2 and 3. But before we can actually process the price of the item back to Australian dollars, we need to collect the price of the item. To do this, we're going to create a variable. And we're going to go let, and I'm just going to call it item cost. And that's going to be equal to the information that was put into the text box called txt item price. So what I want to do is get that txt item price, and I want to get the text portion of that text box. But the problem is we can't process text. You can't perform mathematical calculations on text. So I need to actually typecast this text box or the information from the text box and turn it into a float. This will allow us then to deal with decimal points. Now you notice that an error appears with no exact matches. So after text, just put an exclamation mark. And then we need to create another variable. So we're going to declare this as var, and we're going to call this AU dollars. And this is where we're going to calculate the answer of the conversion into. And this is also going to be a float. And we're going to let that equal 0 at the moment. Now we've taken the information from the user interface. We've also set up where we're going to put the answer. If they select US dollars, we can then do the processing in here. Well, what do we want to do? Well, we need to set the US rate at the moment. So I'm going to go let US rate, and I'm going to set that to the current US rate, which is about 0.651836. You can look this up on a website and get your exchange rate in your area. Now, once I've got that exchange rate, I can then work out how many Australian dollars it will take. So I need to store that in the Australian dollars, and that's going to be equal to and I'm going to use brackets just to make life a little bit easier, the item cost divided by the US rate. So using bracket means it completes this operation and then puts this into the US dollars. Now, once again, it doesn't know the constraint of item cost, so you need to put the exclamation mark there. And we also need to declare the US rate as a float to ensure that this data is handled correctly. Now, once that's done, we can then output this to the label on the screen. So we can go LBL AU cost dot text is equal to, and then we can go AU dollars. Now the problem with AU dollars, it's declared as a float, and because we're putting it into a text box, we've got to turn this back to text. So if we place it in brackets, we can then use a typecast and tell it to be a string again. So this will convert the float back to a string and put it out into the text area of this label. So let's have a look and see if our processing is working. So let's go to the simulator. We'll enter in $100 and click on US. And you can see that we've got 153.41.28.3 Australian dollars for 100 US dollars. So that's not the best way of doing it, because at the moment we've got too many decimal points. So how can we round it? Well, there is a simple way of doing this. We can go AU dollars is equal to, and if we round, we can actually round the AU dollars times 100. And what that would do is actually add 2 decimal points, or move the decimal point of the answer 2 to the right. And because that's going to be rounded, it's going to actually turn it into an integer. So by doing this, we can actually move it to the right 2, round it, and then all we have to do is divide the result of that by 100 again to move the decimal point back to the left by 2. So let's have a look at this little bit of mathematical wizardry and see if it gives us 2 decimal points. So once again, I'll enter in 100, click on US dollars, and you can now see we have 2 decimal points. So the last thing we may want to do for the user experience is just improve the output. So what I'm going to do is put a $sign at the front. To do that, all I have to do is put the $sign in. Because it's going to be a string, I can just add it together. So the dollars plus a string, so a string plus string, so it makes like a word, or one word. And then I may want to put like the AU dollars at the end. So I'm going to put a space AU. So we should see $sign, the amount of the cost in 2 decimal points with AU at the end. So let's just run this now. Once again, put in 100. Click US dollars. Now we've got 153.41 Australian dollars required to buy an item in the US for $100. Now you should be able to follow the process for euros and also for the pound and for any other currency that you would like to create. And once you've finished all your coding and tested it that it's working, you can then go back to the storyboard and start working on the visual appearance for the user experience. So I hope you found this tutorial useful. If you did, give it a like, subscribe to my YouTube channel. Also have a look around for other useful Xcode tutorials.